Welcome to V2T IELTS Listening Forecast. In this test, you will practice a full IELTS listening forecast with audio, subtitle, and answers designed in the Cambridge exam style. The test includes Part 1 to Part 4, just like the real IELTS exam. Get ready, focus carefully, and good luck with your practice. Now turn to Section 1.
About the recent homeowner's insurance inquiry. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Hello.
Yes, I'd like to speak with Janet Evans, please.
Speaking.
Hi, Miss Evans. This is Jim Rodriguez, calling from Fairly Mutual about your recent homeowner's insurance inquiry.
Yes, hi. Thanks for returning my call.
My pleasure. I understand you are potentially interested in insurance for a bungalow located a bit out of town. Could you give me the address?
Sure, it's 49 Greenway Court. Greenway is one word.
Thank you. All right, and would you prefer to be contacted via email or phone?
Either one is fine. Maybe try emailing me first, and as an alternative, I can give you my phone number.
Great. And what is your email address?
pk2@cat.com.
Did you say cat as in the animal?
Yes, it is the acronym for the construction company I work for. I'm sure you've seen them around.
Yes, I have. And could you give me your primary phone number and the best time to reach you?
Sure. The number is 020-4251-9443. I am generally unable to answer my phone at work, but any time after 5:30 p.m. is fine.
I will make a note of that here. Now, I'm going to ask you a little bit about property itself, so we can make an accurate estimate of the cost of insuring your home. Could you tell me the size of your house?
Well, I don't have the exact measurements, but I'm pretty sure it's right around 80 square meters. Should I measure it and call you back later?
No, that's completely all right. I'll write 80 square meters for now to get the estimate, and then an agent will come get the exact measurements later on if you decide to purchase our insurance.
Okay, great.
And what material is your house made of? Like, for example, wood, brick, stucco?
It's mainly brick.
Great. That will give you a lower rate than most other materials since it is so strong.
Wonderful.
And do you have any sort of home security, Miss Evans?
We don't have a fence or anything yet, but we have an alarm system that we use regularly.
Good.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Now, I'll go through a number of things we offer coverage for, and I'd like you to tell me which items you want your policy to cover.
Okay.
We'll start with the building itself first. Would you like us to cover incidental damage to the structure to your house?
Absolutely.
Splendid. And the contents inside your house? We usually cover all items with an appraised value of about £200. Would you like us to cover theft and damage beyond natural wear and tear? I will let you know that the second option here will come with a considerable increase in your rates.
I think I'd just like the contents of the house to be covered against theft then.
All right, and would you like any other insurance? fire, flood, etc.?
Yes, I definitely want flood coverage. It rains a lot here and the drainage system in the area is not the greatest.
Okay, I am calculating your quotation now. It will just take a second. It looks like your annual insurance rate will be £148.30.
Thanks, that seems somewhat reasonable. I would like to take some time to think about it. How long does it take to begin receiving coverage after signing up?
It depends on the time of year. It can take anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. I would say if you sign up by July the 1st, you could start your coverage by August the 1st.
I see. Okay, thanks for your help. Should I call you back at this number when I have made my decision?
Yes, please, and so that we can look up your account faster. I'll give you a reference number that you should provide when calling. Ready?
Yep.
It's TR278Q.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you, and have a nice day.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2. Part 2.
You will hear a speaker talking about saving energy in the home. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 12. Now listen and answer questions 11 to 12.
Many thanks for inviting me along to talk about saving energy in the home. This is a key issue for many people who now find themselves on tight budgets. So today I'd like to spend a few minutes going through some simple tips to help keep those energy bills to a minimum. I'll start with some easy, cheap ideas before talking about more major solutions later. I think we're all aware of the importance of insulating our homes, and although I'd advise you to get it done, I appreciate it can sometimes be inconvenient to have building work carried out. And though they're growing in popularity, having solar panels installed on the roof isn't a cheap enough option for many of us to consider seriously. So what other steps can we take? Well, most people will make a point of turning the heating down when temperatures outside rise, but they ignore other equally useful ways of saving energy when they're making dinner or doing their weekly laundry.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 13 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 13 to 20.
If you're living in a relatively new apartment or house, you're probably blessed with a cosy, draft-free living space. But for those of us in older properties, the chances are there are gaps all over the place where cold air is getting in. Walk around your home and place the back of your hand around window frames. Can you feel cold air coming in from outside? Get down on your knees at the doors. Is there a draft at floor level? Fix these drafts with some cheap draft excluders and savings in heating bills will begin straight away. And are you using the latest energy-saving light bulbs? I'm not recommending you go around your entire property throwing out older ones and replacing them all immediately. But next time a bulb goes, make sure you buy an energy-efficient alternative. And what about heating? If you have radiators in every room, do you need them all switched on throughout the day? If they're on timers, set them efficiently. Then there's a laptop or your TV. Do you leave them switched on overnight or on standby? Don't waste money. Turn them off. And that goes for lights as well. You'd be surprised how many people leave them on when they go out. There are also guaranteed savings to be made in the kitchen. I'm always telling my husband not to overfill the kettle when he makes a cup of tea. Why boil more water than you actually need? When you consider how many times that kettle gets used every day, you'll appreciate just how much electricity can be saved by boiling what you need and no more. And the next time you're cooking pasta or potatoes, keep a lid on the pot. The water will boil much more quickly than if you leave it off. And if you've bought yourself a pressure cooker or steamer and it's sitting in the cupboard never being used, get it out. They're much more efficient than pots and pans. Now, the refrigerator and freezer. If the fridge is next to the cooker, it's having to work harder to stay cold. But as I'm giving cheap, easy solutions here, a kitchen redesign might be out of the question. Still, there are other energy-saving steps you can take. Keep an eye on the temperature control. We often forget to turn it down in the colder winter months when a high setting is unnecessary. Also, remember to defrost the freezer frequently and try not to overfill it, as this isn't the most efficient way of using it. The washing machine is another potential money saver. A lot of people wash at 40 degrees Celsius, but it's often okay to drop the temperature down to 30 degrees Celsius with similar results. And remember to either wash full loads or select the half load program. Again, a surprising number of people forget to do this. And is it really necessary to dry your clothes in a tumble dryer? If you have a garden or a yard, hang them outside. Or if you're drying them inside, get yourself a cheap clothes rail rather than hanging things over radiators, which robs you of valuable heat. Now, let's turn to some of the help our local council is offering to householders to save energy.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3. Part 3.
Maria is a student at university. She has handed the first draft of an essay to her tutor. The tutor has read it, and now they are discussing ways the essay can be improved. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 21 to 25.
Well, Maria, I have to say I was quite impressed by your essay. It's a big improvement on the last one.
Really? I'm glad. I put a lot more work into this one. I really spent ages on it.
And it shows. You've addressed most of the problems I pointed out last time. In particular, the style and language are much more appropriate for an academic essay.
So that aspect is okay?
Absolutely. If you carry on like this, you shouldn't have any significant problems in that department.
That's a relief. I've been quite worried about that, although I've been reading a lot of other essays to try to get the right style.
Well, I'd say you've been successful. There are just one or two minor things you could look at. Your punctuation's quite basic. It's really just full stops and commas. And parentheses.
Brackets?
Yes, brackets if you prefer. In academic writing, these are best used only occasionally, if at all. You use them rather too often.
Okay, I see.
And I'm sorry to mention it, but your spelling.
I know, but I'm working on a foreign computer. The spell checker doesn't work for English.
Are you sure? Have you tried changing the setting to English?
No, I haven't.
Well, I should see if that's possible. I haven't marked you down this time, but, well, some of my colleagues are a bit old-fashioned about spelling. I'd try to get that sorted out if I were you.
Okay, I understand. I'll try to change the setting.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
The only major problem I have with the content of your essay is the introduction. The introduction should, well, introduce the theme of the essay. You've put some of the most important points there. For example, this bit. The statistics about the growth of railways in the 1850s. That really should go in the main body of the essay. And so should this paragraph about changes in patterns of employment. In general, I'd say your introductory section should be no more than half as long as it is at the moment.
Okay. And I should move those points forward?
Precisely. And going back to the railways, they're one of the most significant factors for change in this period. But apart from those statistics in the introduction, you only briefly mention them. I'd like to see a lot more on that, and the influence the expansion of the railways had on patterns of social and economic behaviour.
You mean how with the railways people could travel to find work and could meet people from other areas?
Exactly. Then in the midsection, well, it's not a big thing, but this quotation from the Times.
You think it's too long?
Well, you said it.
I couldn't think of a way to shorten it.
Do you think it's really necessary?
You mean I could just get rid of it?
Yes. You've already made the point and backed it up with other evidence. The quotation's redundant, really.
Okay, well, that'll be easy.
There were various other minor points, which I've noted in the margins. You can look at those later. But moving forward to the end here, I wasn't quite sure what this meant.
The final paragraph?
Yes. Are you saying that, on the whole, the changes of the mid-19th century tended to improve the lives of ordinary people or not? It's not very clear.
It's not?
No, it isn't. I'd add a few lines clarifying your position.
Okay. When do you want the final draft?
No, the end of term will be fine. But there was just one other thing, the bibliography. Did you really read all these books?
No.
Just the books you actually consulted will be fine. You don't need to include everything ever published on the subject.
Right, okay. Thanks. Bye.
Goodbye.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You are going to hear a lecture about the geographic information about Australia. You now have some time to read questions 31 to 40. Now listen to the lecture and answer questions 31 to 40 by choosing the best answers from the choices.
Good morning, everybody. We'll continue to look at Australia, and today look at one of its greatest natural challenges, water for the agricultural sector. As the only nation to occupy an entire continent, Australia has a unique environment with much of it very flat and dry. One notable feature of the Australian continent is that it is the lowest of the continents. The average elevation is less than 300 metres, compared with the world's mean of 700 metres, and its highest mountain is only 2,228 metres, so it is overall a very flat country. It is also dry. In fact, Australia is the driest, after Antarctica, of the continents. Yet Australia has extremes of climate and topography. There are rainforests and vast plains in the north, snowfields in the southeast, deserts in the centre, and fertile croplands in the east, south, and southwest. And Australia contains some of the wettest areas on Earth. In western Tasmania and on the northern Queensland coast, but half of the continent has an annual rainfall of less than 300 millimetres each year, and only 20% has more than 600 millimetres each year. A major problem is that the limited water resources do not match up with where water is consumed. The major water resources are in northern Australia and Tasmania, whereas most of the agriculture and people are in southeastern mainland Australia. The agricultural sector is the largest consumer of both self-extracted and main-supplied water, using over 70% of total net water consumption. Electricity and gas supply, and water, sewerage and drainage services use notable amounts of self-extracted water. However, net consumption in the household sector is the lowest, just 8% of total net water used. Australia's water use increased by 25% over the decade between the mid-1980s and mid-1990s. Much of this increase was due to irrigated agriculture, which, as noted earlier, accounts for over 70% of national water demand. Since the mid-1990s, the growth and profitability of irrigated agriculture has outstripped the dryland agriculture sector. Irrigated commodities contributed almost a third of total farm exports in the mid-1990s. The results of a special government report in 2000 showed that if today's water use arrangements continue, the water needs of the rural industries will outstrip water availability by about 2020. Irrigated agriculture, Australia's major water-using sector, would be seriously affected by the shortfall. And although groundwater underlies large areas of Australia, it accounts for only 4% of water use. So, clearly, apart from water for households, which mainly comes from dams or rivers, it is the rural sector where efforts towards water conservation are particularly directed. In this sector, the largest consumers of water are the meat and wool industries. One of the major problems in considering sustainable agriculture is the large amounts of irrigated water used to produce these products. Some of the crops, such as wheat, maize, and soybeans, also use a lot of water. Furthermore, many crops are grown in dry areas, where up to half the available water evaporates from the soil surface or seeps down too low into the ground for the plant roots to reach it. Well, that's all we have time for this morning. You will be able to do further study on this topic in the library, and I have a handout here with references for those who want to come out to the front to collect it. Next week, we'll look at outback farming and...
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
That is the end of the listening section. You now have 2 minutes to review your answers before the test automatically moves on to the next section. Please take this time to check your answers carefully. Make sure all your responses are recorded in the correct places, and review your spelling, grammar, and formatting. Once the time is up, the system will take you directly to the reading section. Please remain seated and stay focused. The next section will begin shortly.